Okay. All right, Bo. Greetings from Govardhan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya. Taksuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from Govardhan. So I have an audience, so I'm kind of talking to two people, two groups at once. But yeah, I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm apologizing but this has been such an unusual month for me, because I never had a yatra for 1 month. I have a new computer with a computer that crashed with all my books. I'm not sure I got the books back yet, so I haven't been able to prepare the Bhagavatamrita. And I think the secret of my success is my steadiness, because I see, Henry here and different people, Gail, a few people here. They've been listening to me for like, I can't even remember how long. Maybe that's been 12 years. And I could be in Antarctic. I would find a cell phone, and it could be 1 o'clock in the morning. I would give the class to keep the steadiness. And the real power is when you discuss Shastra contiguously, because when things are in context, they get greater power than when you express them independently. Like, just if you make a philosophical point, that's one thing. But if you make a philosophical point that supports another point, it has another dynamic. So my whole thing has been teaching in context. Even, people think I study a lot. Well, I told you what I learned from Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I told you this before. He told women are better at certain things than men, for sure. Okay. Well, this is like a good team. Okay, 1 second. Okay, here. Okay, that's okay. What I learned from Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he told me once, and I really took it to heart, and it really suits my way of doing things. He said that he told Prabhupada he was so busy he didn't have time to study. Prabhupada said 15 minutes of class is 2 hours of study. So my study has been practically every day, especially I lived in Vrindavan every day. And you can't imagine how many books you go through and how much the mind becomes activated, because there's no more powerful Krishna Anushilanam or absorption than speaking. Because you're using your mouth and you're talking at the same time, the memory is just and you're speaking and you know something else is going on and it's just a complete absorption. And somehow that sharing it creates also a kind of a connection with the super soul that a lot of times realizations come beyond your own capacity to compose them. So that's been my strength, and I've been without it for about a month. And then I guess the excuse was also then I was giving, I guess it was interesting. I was giving the Ras theory and Krishna Lila as I was giving in Mayapur to the audience. So you were sharing in that. So that was kind of good. But I'm missing the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And it's like a master book. Now, another thing I have to say I'm pretty excited about. Well, I'll give a little Christina and Paula here and Igor. And you know, the retreat that we did, it was mystical. And mystical means that something is created beyond your effort and beyond your experience. And I'll give you an example. We chant the holy name sometimes, and it's kind of like you can go to a kirtan and you know you can watch your clock. But I had the experience here. My room has great acoustics. That we did kirtan for 2 hours every night, and everyone was in full absorption to a very deep degree. Yeah, it was great. And then, of course, we had that experience. You know, I guess my ashram mate, Sabyasachi, very brilliant guy, a lot of deep realizations, and he just shared with me an experience which is just so true that when you give happiness to other Vaishnavas, it invokes incredible blessings. And I had this really you know experience, you know, when things mercy is undeserved beyond your effort. So usually, you know, I'm up early and you know it's like regular and I begin my writing, my studying, then I'm sitting and chant by 6:30, you know, there's at least 32 rounds done minimum, you know, and with this retreat, you know, because you're the nature, I guess, why Krishna has given me this service. Everybody has a service according to their propensity. And I think one reason Krishna gives me the service is because I'm very aware of the environment and concerned with it for people's happiness. It's my nature. So my room may be a mess because it's for me, but but when I'm doing a festival, everything has to be, I'm a connoisseur and I experience distaste if any element is not 100% the way I want it, from the prasadam to the kirtans to the schedule. So I'm focused also, my nature, on everyone's mind. So, you know, so I'm doing this for a month. I'm focused on everybody's mind and everybody's happy. You know, so it doesn't lend to my bhajan. It doesn't lend to my study. So generally, and I have a japa every day in my ashram. My ashram is 7 to 8 people come and chant japa who's here. And then 8 to 9, we have kirtan and then a little class. And I had this experience, maybe I explained this before, but maybe the people that are here haven't heard it, that I just wasn't in the mode. And then the eating, because it's the prasad is off the charts 3 times a day. We have this Vaishnav cook, pure Vaishnav cook that lives near Radhakund, a brahmachari, Prabhupada's line. He's not only a great cook, he's expertly organized. There's not a day where the prasadam's not late. It's not steaming hot. It comes in these big tiffins. It's perfectly cooked. It's wrapped up with tape so that nothing can leak. And, so I also eat. So for one sense, I guess it wasn't, but when the japa period would begin, inconceivably, it's the best japa I ever chanted. And what I ascribe that now is to this principle that when you make Vaishnavas happy, it creates, blessings. So that's been my experience. And then I guess people stayed on. So we still have people here in the Asha. And I hope you meet Arbrita. She's really wonderful. A disciple of mine I hadn't seen in, I don't know, 5, 10 years. And I'd like to bring her to your house tomorrow at 9. It's 9, 10. And maybe see the film that you made and things. Did I ever send you the thing she did on just with a phone? I'll send it to you tonight, just with a phone on my retreat, so you get an idea. But there's another retreat that just started here. And the other retreat that just started here, Hari Parshad, Sachinandan and Guranga Darshans, 3 great. And Hari Parshad's class, I think that's what Christina and Paul, you would really love this. His classes, I mean, he's not only a scholar, but he's an intellect. He's intellectual. He's brilliant and challenging. So I think I can share with you a point that he made, and I want to see where the whole thing goes, because he did something that it's not usually the way it works. The way it works is we usually present tyaga or renunciation, right? There's a lot of that, right? A lot of no, no, no. And it's in our philosophy, Nadanam, Najanam, the Sundarim, Kavitam, Va, Jagadisha, I don't want this, I don't want this. It's there in our philosophy. And then myself, because I try to be sensitive to not just speak the truth, but have the truth understood. I always have to become apologetic, but our philosophy is not renunciation; it's dedication. There's a role for sense gratification in our. It's not the purpose of what we do, but we need it, and take as much as you need, and kind of balance it out so that people don't get confused. Even this is really interesting. I have a theme now that I'm going to speak on, and I hope it all connects together. In the morning, sometimes I'm reading one of my articles from my book, Monday Morning Greetings, and then we discuss it. There's 4 or 5 people here, and we discuss it. So I read one article, Only the Ignorant Have Enemies. And then I read this verse from Prahlad Maharaj, who's telling his father, only the ignorant have enemies. And enemies was defined not in the way we usually have defined enemies, as those who oppose our objectives are our enemies. And therefore, when you are Krishna conscious and you understand, when you're Krishna conscious and you understand that everything that comes to you is for you, then no one's your enemy. Right? And but then seeing the response I got from one new devotee that comes every day to hear the class, and just getting this sense, and something I may work on for Monday morning greetings. I'm still working on this philosophical point. And the point that I'm kind of working on is that a lot of the Shastra was spoken in the context of a society that was psychologically healthy. And therefore, when you speak things like you have, something's wrong, that you have to see it as your own fault, etc. People are already beaten down in a modern society. Like 80% of the people have psychological insecurities because they don't come from intact family. They weren't loved sufficiently or not. They have certain, um, psychological in trauma, insecurities, etc. So to have them reflect on the philosophy is not the same as someone reflecting on the philosophy. This is a completely creative idea. It's not the same as someone reflecting on the philosophy that comes from a psychologically intact problem. I had that once. I remember I was in the school, and I saw one kid crying, and why are you crying? Because I did something wrong. You know, that would be maybe the reaction of someone being punished, right? Who's from a psychologically intact thing, and the teacher was a proper person, etc. But someone who was abused and difficulty, he would react with anger. He would see the teacher as my enemy. And the example I got of this that stuck in my mind so much is I used to hold this festival in America when nothing was going on. And I remember I had one festival that it was like nothing was going on in America at one particular time. And I have the festival. Indraduma Swami came, Bibi Govinda Swami came, Radhanath Swami, Sachinanda. Everybody was at this festival I made until Indraduma Swami started to make his Sadhu Sanga festival thing. And anyway, I used to do this festival every year, the Panihati Festival. It's of Raghunath Das Goswami, and he was a renunciate, and there's a part of it that he leaves his family, and his family is attached. And who is his family? His family are the richest people in Bengal who purchased a district in Bengal where the Vaishnavas were free to practice. Not a bad service. And who are they hosting? Haridas Thakur, right? And then Lord Chaitanya is like ripping on them. They're like worms in stool. They're attached. He said he can joke, but the philosophy was very heavy, right? So from that, I started to preach a little bit renunciation, right? And there were two groups of people. And this is the point I'm trying to work out in my mind. There were two groups of people. One were the Raval family and their friends. The Raval family was five brothers that lived together. Three were doctors, their wives, their mother, their father, the in-laws, and everybody else. And they all had money, they all had jobs, they all had family, they all had, they had all these things. And the rest were these young people who had nothing together yet. They haven't yet got married, they haven't found their career, they came from these families, So one group, when I was preaching real heavy, the Indians were going like this, about yes, yes, yes. This is what they needed to hear. And the rest of the group was saying, you're criticizing the very thing I'm trying to get in my life to be peaceful. So a different kind of context. Yeah. So Hari Parshad's class, I don't know where it's going. It's Boga, Tyaga, enjoyment and renunciation and beyond. So he's presenting first the necessity for Boga. In other words, instead of saying renunciation first and then being apologetic that, people have needs, he's promoting first Boga, material enjoyment, and kama, sense gratification. In a very, very, very interesting way, the necessity for it. And that if one doesn't have dharma, artha, and kama, right, then moksha becomes very, very difficult. If one doesn't go through that in the proper way, then moksha becomes very, very difficult. And he's presenting this in a very, very strong way. And it's very, 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 very interesting. And just my own perceptions, I'll throw it in here, that I see sometimes. In other words, it's got to be balanced. I don't know where it's going yet, but I see sometimes that the most renounced God brothers are sometimes older grihastas that went through this, rather than even some of the sannyasis, except, maybe some sannyasis are really, renounced. So I see that. And he was giving, but there's he's brilliant. So even the points I was thinking, oh, I'll challenge him. What is it? Kamesya, no, what is it? Dharmasya yapavargasya. Dharma is meant for liberation, right? And one should never use, one should never use, sense gratification for liberation. Dharma is meant for liberation. And then he puts the verse up and points to the Sanskrit word of that's for one who is like fully, fully. Anyway, so then today he was presenting kama, and it may sound confusing, and I got to see the rest of the class. But what the point he was making is he quoted from the he quoted from the Ishopanishads that one has to have vidya and avidya side by side. Vidya and avidya side by side. And vidya is knowledge of transcendence, but avidya means knowledge that can help, that doesn't give you transcendence, but can help transcendence. And then he found that he was, I don't think this is as clear as it can be. So I'm sorry for today. But when I left the class, it was very interesting. And I forgot what Shastra, but he gave this verse. Now listen to this verse. Now, vidya means material knowledge, but not just any material knowledge. But kama, like in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Dharma varudhe bhuta ishu kamosti barsha. I'm sex life, but according to how it's done. So it's enjoyment according to how it's done. So and avidya was just material knowledge, but not just any material knowledge. Like, for example, he described poetics and he described without poetics, it's not connected with Krishna. Without poetics, it's very hard to soften the heart. It's very hard to soften the heart without poetics, and it's necessary for Krishna consciousness. Therefore, I'll just go off in one sense. This is not as clear as I want, but I'll keep on speaking. Um, for example, our philosophy is called Yukta. Our renunciation is Yukta Vairagya, balanced detachment. And what does balanced detachment mean? It means we give up those things that have no value to Krishna's service. So when you do that, if you just renounce everything, why? Because the heart has to be exercised for devotion. And if it's just gyan, gyan means closing the heart, closing the heart, closing the heart, closing the heart. No, 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 no. If you just renounce, then the heart doesn't get exercised for the emotions necessary for bhakti. So, or even Varnashram, where desires are regulated. And what happens when desires are regulated? When desires are regulated, two things happen. You satisfy them enough that you don't meditate on them excessively. And you renounce them enough that you practice detachment. So he was pointing to the necessity of vidya, that kind of knowledge and the kind of things that they're not transcendent in themselves, but they support transcendence because they cultivate the emotions, they cultivate the heart, they cultivate these things that are necessary in devotional service. And then he found and translated for the first time this commentary on poetry or something, where Sanatana Goswami comments on that. He comments on that poetry. And then he listed, like, I don't know, about 30 books that Rupa Goswami wrote just on poetry. And then he quoted, I forgot the reference. Listen to this, it's mind-blowing. Those who worship avidya enter darkness and ignorance and come back to this world. Avidya. It's not just ignorance, but it's knowledge that has some use, but it's not, you don't transcend by that knowledge, but it can be used. However, those who are fully engaged only in vidya fall even into greater darkness.
It's Ishopanishad 9.
What?
Ishopanishad 9th mantra.
No, this is not.
Yeah.
No, I don't. This is not. No, this is not Ishopanishad's 9 mantra. He quoted that also. That maybe it's a commentary on that, but it's not that mantra. 9 is something else. So, so why did they fall into a greater darkness? And we see that, right? When you see that people take to transcendence before their hearts are properly purified, they can cause even greater. That's the history of the Hare Krishna movement. People just vidya, just transcendence, and I'm ready just for transcendence, where they haven't actually cultivated other things in their life, like human relations and yeah, a few people made it through. So it says poetry transforms and what's that? Okay, yeah. It says poetry he said poetry transforms the heart. And he says, like poetry, for example, he says poetry transforms the heart, not the body. So it's I can't do the justice that he did to it, but it's he's promoting the necessity to cultivate dharma, artha, and kama, and not just take the moksha. But I think beyond is bhakti, and I'm waiting for the beyond. But anyway, it's a lot of food for thought.
That's usually how it is. If you want to get rid of something, you do it, and then you're gonna do it till you realize, okay, there's this.
Well, I also thought, now I'll get back to our study of Brihad Bhagavatamrita.
Yeah.
We saw that Gop Kumar, he's going on this path of liberation. And we see that he has to go through all the material elements. And when he goes through each material element, somehow he gets embodied by each material element. And each material element facilitates an enjoyment 10 million times more than the next. And each element, the earth is fragrance, water is taste, fire is vision, air is touch, ether is sound, and pradhan is the combination of, and he has to go through all those. So there's something, Prabhupada said with Jayananda, great devotee, if he had any desire, he enjoys 10,000 years at the demigods and then comes back. Anyway, I'm sorry to give half of the presentation and you weren't even there, and he prepared it so nicely. But I think the aspect he's presenting is, and he gave the example of Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami is a great example. Raghunath Das Goswami tried to be a renunciate, and he left everything and to go to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya sent him back and said, act like an ordinary pounds and shilling, ordinary person. So he goes back and he demonstrates three things. One, he solves this. One, renunciation really has to be tested. Because of this, if you're fully engaged only in vidya, you fall into a greater darkness. If you're not qualified and it's only transcendence, there's studies that show that people that misunderstand philosophies that touch with transcendence, they can become less empathetic than ordinary people. What? Yes, you do. But the people who are really advanced, they're the 20% that are really advanced are more empathetic than people. And yeah, so he what was I speaking about?
About the Raghunath.
What?
Raghunath.
Yeah, so three things. At least I said three things before. Let's see if I remember them. One, he showed that renunciation has to be tested. He showed that it's not for losers, because he was very, very expert. In other words, he renounced the world, but it's not that he couldn't deal in the world. He was very expert at it. I was walking with, he solved the family problem and by genius diplomacy. I was walking with Ladini Radha, and I saw all these people in saffron, all these Indian sadhus. And I said, what's the difference between a sadhu and a hippie? A sadhu takes a bath. because all these people, in other words, they take, what?
I don't feel right to laugh.
What's that?
I don't feel right to laugh about that.
Well, wait, no, yeah, I'm just saying, a lot of the saffron you see is just people who, they could be advanced, etc. But a lot of it, a majority of it, India, if you go in Vrindavan and you see people walking in lines for food, it's because they couldn't make it in the world, and now now all of a sudden they're advanced. Yeah. Anyway, Christina, you laughed, so that was good. At least I got from you. You can explain to him later. Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. So I'm trying to just complete the class, just.
What was the third one?
Let's see what I said. Well, he was expert. Well, one is that he was expert. I think it's the same.
You get a
That-
challenge, you're gonna be expert,
What?
you get a challenge.
I think that's really the two, that it really has to be real. And it's not for people it's not just for people who are can't function in the world. It has to be some real, and that was Raghunath Das Goswami.
And that's what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent him back to kind of.
He sent them back. There's another reason why he sent them back.
To go through the steps, not just.
Well, the other reason he sent them back, somehow today, I went over there. They have this wedding across from me. And I went over there. They're right across the park from me. And I went over there and I said a little bit, I said, "Oh, Swamiji, we're just testing the speakers. We're just testing." Then it got, but I guess the party's starting now. It's so, now the other reason comes up later. When Lord Chaitanya goes, when Raghunath Das Goswami tells his father finally, he said, typical teenager said, not teenager, but daddy, if you love me, then why won't you let me do what I want? Why don't you let me go? At least Nityananda's, those rascals. What? It's right across. This is the worst one. Why don't you let me do what I want? Right? Why don't you let me do what I want? And so he finally, sometimes when the son just, yes, father has to, satisfy the son to some degree. So he says, okay, you can go to Nityananda, but I'm sending people to guard you. And then he goes to Nityananda, and Nityananda is sitting under a tree, very effulgent. And Raghunath Das is so famous because he says, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself from maybe last week, but he's the son of the richest man in West Bengal. So he's kind of famous. But he's a very humble guy. And he's kind of in the background. He's shy. He doesn't want to, push himself to the front, or he just wants, when you're humble, you're not entitled. You're not entitled, and you don't take more. So he's in the back, and then everybody says, there he is. So they call him. They call him to come. And when they call him to come, Lord Chaitanya says, you're a thief, and I'll punish you. Now, the traditional analysis of why he's called a thief is because, thieves hide in the background. And it's kind of love talk. And love talk means you say things indirectly. That's why poetry is so much more powerful medium than prose. Because when you have to figure something out, the force of your consciousness, it absorbs you and hits you more than rather when you're told something. That's why when I lecture, I try to get the audience active rather than passive. by a question or have them speak. What? No, it's right across the street here. Is it? It sounds like it's coming from there, but I hope it's coming from there, because if it's coming there, it'll be moving. Right? It's a special day, something's going on. So indirectly, it's a very loving way. You're a thief, you're hiding. But this commentator in Vrindavan, who started the Harinam Press, he was from Punjab. He was a prolific writer, and he was pretty brilliant. And I got this book he translated on Raghunath Das on the 6 Goswamis that had brilliant realizations that he never heard. That kind of thinker. And he said the reason why he called him a thief is because Lord Nityananda represents Guru. And Lord Chaitanya, Raghunath Das Goswami went to God directly, when God is supposed to be the property of his devotee. So therefore, he was trying to steal what belongs to Guru and has to be given. And therefore, yeah, and therefore he was punished. And of course, the punishment was to serve the Vaishnavas, which removes all obstacles. Okay, I mean, my beloved class, you still show up, and I'm not so prepared like I usually am. And I believe, I'm going to click on it right now. I believe I got my books. No, I don't. I'll have to go to the person who runs the company, who gives the Vedaram, and get it installed, because I press on it and it says, Apple could not verify Vedaram is free of malware that may harm your Mac or compromise your privacy. Even though he sent me it.
You could try maybe right click.
What?
Right click and open it.
What?
Right click and open. Would you like me to try?
Right click? Okay, let me try.
That's overrides. It's more like an administrator opening.
Okay. Okay, I'll try the right click now.
And then open.
No. I don't even know what a right click is, but I'm doing it on the right side. Okay, here, try it. It's. Go ahead.
Where is it?
What?
Where is the book?
Oh, here, this. Okay, good.
Oh. Yeah, no, you gotta.
Okay, I'm gonna go tomorrow to the guy who
Yeah,
does it.
I can look it up. I can look at it now.
Okay, hi, Bo, you just there. Nice to see you.
Maharaj, my obeisances, I absolutely loved the direction you're going with that class.
Well, go listen to the whole class and let's see where it's going at the end. Okay?
Yeah, it's you're
being-
you're opening a door, Maharaj, and you know that.
No, I don't know that. I don't. He's presenting one side. I really like to see the complete balance of it and where it goes and how I'll keep you informed personally. I'll call you and talk about it and
That'd be
forward
great.
the link.
Thank you.
If you want to just say hello for a second, you can say hello. I can't with this speakers blasting. And Jumanajai, you want to say hello?
Hi, Raj. Thank you for class. I got a lot out of it. I know, like, when you speak about how people have to have the right psychological makeup to hear things, I see that all the time, and I was really reflecting on that week with some of my yoga students. So thank you for pointing that out. And I love the thing about not having enemies. So nice. Hey, thank you, Miraj.
Okay. I'm going to just head out now because it's too much, and I'll just talk to my guest here. And okay, thank you.